Welcome to a special mini episode of the Energy Things podcast. I'm spotlighting leaders and their reactions to my new book, The Myth and the Moment. I'm Tisha Schuller, your host. I'm also the CEO of Adamantine Energy. And today I had the great pleasure of speaking with John Dabbar, who is the CSC chair, which is the coordinating subcommittee for the National Petroleum Council's Committee on Greenhouse Gas Emissions. They did a big report. It took more than a year, and John was a wonderful leader. I hope you enjoy my mini pod conversation with John Dabbar. John Dabbar, thank you for joining me once again on the Energy Things podcast, this time with our mini episode.
Thanks, Tisha. Great to be here.
I would love to get your take on my new book, The Myth and the Moment. You got to pre-read an early copy, as actually has become a habit with all my books. I love to get your 2 cents. So I'd love to start with, what are your reactions to the book?
Well, first, I really enjoyed reading it, Tish, and I appreciate having a chance to take a look at it. It really shows you've got 3 factors that come across in your podcast, and they really come across in your book. First is your depth of experience. I don't think they could write a Hollywood script and say, let's create a character called Tisha Schuller and give her this resume. And people would go, nah, nobody could do all of that.
Not feasible, yeah.
The second thing that comes across is your level of empathy. You have an amazing ability to put yourself into the shoes of people sitting across the table from you, whether they like you or not. And it's a really strong and powerful skill. And it really comes across in the book and the way that you describe the myth and the moment and the opportunity. And then the third is that your book is really concise and actionable. You're obviously not being paid by the word, because what you deliver is really succinct in a quality way. And I think readers will really appreciate that, because you say it clearly, and you say it in a way that's actionable. So those are my impressions of your book.
Well, John, thank you for that. I've never thought of my empathy as being a result of so many people not liking me, but it's kind of true. And we're going to have plenty of more chance ahead, because I think this idea of the myth of an easy energy transition, it's going to involve a lot of tough conversations. People who subscribe to the myth, it has the power of a myth. It has this resonance that we do have to be deeply empathetic to. And those conversations around it running headlong into reality are hard. What have your experiences been of the myth of an easy energy transition? Do you think that our stakeholders, the problem solvers, do you think that they're starting to see that it's unraveling?
So, when we started working on our work on the National Petroleum Council, one of the things we found was that there's actually a lack of knowledge, that people don't really understand the basics of science and engineering, and they're also a little embarrassed that they don't. They don't want to feel like they're not very smart because they don't understand these things. But they're also, people are looking for simple and easy solutions. There's a classic cartoon that shows a long line of people going to a booth that says answers, and there's 2 signs: simple and wrong, complex and right. And people clearly want to go to the simple ones. They just don't know that they're wrong. So, one of the things that we work with and I find is really important is the ability to educate people, but in a way where they don't feel like they're less of a person because they needed to be educated. And people are also somewhat skeptical, and this is, as a technology person, we have to pay attention to this, skeptical of obfuscation and fancy words that they might not understand, or that they tuned out in high school chemistry and they don't want to hear about them again. And they think you're using those fancy words just to confuse them. So that's something that we as technologists have to really think about, is how do you explain things in a way that's the audience will receive them as positive and useful input. They may not agree with your policy choices, but let's at least agree on what the facts are. So that's an important part that we found was that's your writing on the myth was really, really well done, and I think really described it. And there were a couple of things in the book that really jumped out at me, Tisha. One of the things you pointed out is each energy source presents drawbacks, and leaders are now grappling with hard, imperfect choices. I think that was an important part of, what you describe as the myth was they are neither hard nor imperfect. They are easy and perfect choices. And it's
Mhm.
very tempting. And that sort of clarity that comes from that, I think, was really an important part, important message that that came across. Um, and then, the other one I thought was useful was um, helping our stakeholders focus on what matters. Um, we talk about reducing emissions, reliability, affordability. Those are 3 points on a triangle, and trying to solve for those is not an easy solution. And those kind of understanding those trade-offs, I think, was a really important part of the message on the myth.
One of the things you and I have had such fruitful collaborations over the year, John, is because we agree on this idea that we have stakeholders that need to be educated, and yet educating doesn't work in its rawest form because no one wants to be educated by someone. So I love the way you're conveying this as our stakeholders want to hear things in a way they can process it, understand it, and use it.
Mhm.
And to them, that's not being educated. That's just being helped, right? That's just partnership. That's working together. So I love the way you're reframing this idea of education as partnership, as this kind of constructive, maybe even co-creation, right? How we're talking about and thinking about these things. So I'd love to know what you think. Why do you think our colleagues in the oil and gas industry should read this book right now?
So I think there's really three key points why people should read it. The first is it's a really good explanation of the myth, what it means, and what causes it, and not something that you can get from talking to somebody that believes in the myth. So I think that's a really important deliverable. I think your warning of the temptation is really appropriate and almost apocryphal, that people really need to understand that just because the pendulum has swung one way doesn't mean it won't swing back. And so not giving into that temptation and even understanding that you're in it is an important message. And then the last one is what to do about being in the moment. We are in a moment, and part of that moment is how do we use this moment to achieve durable policy? And this is something that we spoke about in the NPC study at great length. Um, but really looking at the key messages of what's in durable policy that lead to the perfect outcome, which is political consensus.
I
And
love
and
that,
I can
John. 'Cause, yeah, we're really not like if we don't take advantage of the moment to get some kind of durable solution, what was the point?
Yeah, and I'd like to review a couple of the points that we covered in the NPC study on the chapter on durable policy. The first is that it is relevant but not rigid. We can all point to rules and regulations that were written in 1920 that are still in place today. Uh, that kind of rigid rule doesn't really serve the advancements in technology, the advancements in human needs. The second, of course, is economic considerations. Nothing is free from economic considerations, whether it's costs to consumers or cost to companies or cost to the government. The third, and we put this in pretty early on in our durable policy model, stakeholder engagement. Who is a stakeholder in the outcome of this policy? And if they're involved in it, there's a chance that they will be more durable. Some of the other key points were around evidence-based policies, the ability to be both transparent and accountable, balancing short-term and long-term needs. And all of those drive you towards public trust, and public trust is what gives you political consensus.
It's really great because the NPC study articulated what I call the 3 T's of energy realism before we knew what they were. And you really helped identify those: time frame, truths, trade-offs. Like you have to have those things to
Mhm.
have durable policy. And we
Yep.
have to have those things to build infrastructure and win the various races, whether it's energy dominance or AI. So I love the work that your study committee did and the report that came out of it. John, one final question I ask all my guests: what are you most optimistic about?
I get to work with a lot of technology experts, and people are inventing new things all the time. And I find it really refreshing that, and optimistic that we live in a country where that kind of innovation can flourish, where the best can rise to the top, where there's all kinds of opportunities for new technologies to be applied for the benefit of all the stakeholders that are involved. So I'm a bit of a techno optimist, and so that's kind of how I lean.
The best is yet to come. John, thank you so much for joining me on the Energy Thinks mini podcast.
Thanks, Tisha. Great to be here.
That's our episode for today. Thank you for listening to this special episode of Energy Thinks. For more about our work at Adamantine, my new book, The Myth and the Moment, I hope you will check out our website, energythinks.com. And while you're there, please subscribe to my newsletter. Both of these things are true, available on LinkedIn and on Substack. I'd like to thank my colleague Kayla for making the Energy Thinks podcast possible. Until next time, I'm Tisha Schuller, wishing you and yours happiness, prosperity, and good health.